Alright, it's been over a month since I used the Galaxy S23 as my daily driver, and I was very wrong about it. You see, a month ago when I made a leaked video about this phone, I trashed this phone so hard because there were practically zero hardware changes other than a new processor and a small bump to the battery capacity. Little did I know that was all this phone needed to go from one of the worst phone models in the lineup I've ever used to literally the best phone I've ever used, period. And if you already know about all the hardware specs on the S22, you literally don't need to watch the review. Just go ahead and order the S23 because I can confidently say that the overheating issue and the poor battery life has been fixed. You can also check out my awesome day in life vlog with the S23 up here. But for those of you who are new to the S23 though, let's start off the hardware, and honestly, not much has changed. The only thing you'll really notice is how Samsung took design cues from the Galaxy S22 Ultra by only having the lens protrude instead of the whole camera block. I think this makes the phone look more minimal and also allows all three phones to look like they belong in the same family. The other upgrade they've made is using the new and improved Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which claims to be able to survive a drop on hard concrete or asphalt, although that is something I'm definitely not going to be trying myself. But otherwise, this phone almost feels exactly like my iPhone 14 Pro, as they are the exact same size, but much more comfortable, as it is one of the lightest phones I've ever used at 168 grams, which is a whole 38 grams lighter than the iPhone 14 Pro. Not to mention, I think this phone looks absolutely stunning with the lavender color I have here, with its metallic purple aluminum rails and the symmetrical camera lenses with matching purple rings. It just feels and looks so good that I really don't want to put on a case, but I still will because I don't trust myself. The beauty doesn't stop when you flip over the phone though. As expected of a Samsung flagship, you get a gorgeous 1080p 120Hz 6.1-inch display with perfectly symmetrical slim bezels. There's only a tiny hole punch selfie camera on the top, which maximizes the screen size on this phone, unlike the big honking dynamic island on the iPhone, although it does have its uses too. Anyways, the screen is sharp, vibrant, and punchy. There's no color casting when you tilt the display, and improved this year is the brightness, which goes up to an insane 1750 nits, meaning that you'll have absolutely no trouble seeing the screen in harsh sunlight. I've also noticed that the auto brightness was working really well on this phone, and I didn't have to keep adjusting the brightness manually, which was great. And also, the 120Hz refresh rate paired with the new animations in One UI 5 does make the phone feel smoother than ever. Unfortunately, it's not an LTPO display that Samsung initially claimed with the launch of the S22, but instead an LTPS panel that only drops down to 48Hz, meaning that you don't get as much power efficiency as the Ultra. Watching videos and movies on this phone though is an amazing experience. The dual speakers with Dolby Atmos enabled gives a great wide soundstage, and this phone can actually get pretty loud for the size as well. And for those of you who still listen to wired headphones like me, using a good dongle of this phone does give you an excellent experience compared to other phones like my Pixel 7. Samsung is using a really great USB-C port here, and I don't ever find myself maxing out the volume even with my planar magnetic headphones. And finally, we get to the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. It's definitely much better than the more common optical fingerprint reader, being much quicker, more secure, and it actually even works if your fingers are slightly dirty or wet with just a tap. Now, before we move on, I just want to say that I will be doing a full detailed comparison of the Pixel 7 soon, so please drop any questions you want me to cover down below in the comments, and you can also check out last year's fun comparison if you want over here. Also, if you want to support a young man like me trying to reach his dreams of being a YouTuber, be sure to subscribe to help me and this video reach more people. Alright, now we can talk about the two most important upgrades on this phone, the new Qualcomm Snapdragon Gen 2 processor and the improvements to battery life. Starting with the processor, Samsung surprises all this year by announcing that the entire Samsung Galaxy S23 lineup will be using the latest and greatest Qualcomm chip, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 worldwide due to an exclusive partnership. This means that outside of North America, the Exynos chips will no longer be used, leading to the same performance and battery life for everyone worldwide. And for those of you in the NA who have no idea what I'm talking about, basically everyone else worldwide got the Samsung phones with their own built-in Exynos chips, which was notorious for slow speeds, worse battery life, and just overall a generally worse experience. And even better, Samsung is using a custom branded Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 version this year, overclocked with higher clock speed speeds, and honestly, I have not noticed a single slowdown while using this phone, and I doubt I'm even coming close to anywhere near its full potential. Also, just a side note, One UI 5 is absolutely amazing now, as there's absolutely zero bugs that I face, unlike my horrible iPhone 14 Pro that the more I use, I just get more angry. But anyways, for the S23 to handle all that raw power, Samsung is also using a new improved cooling system with vapor chamber cooling on the S23 now, instead of the old thermal paste and graphite. Last year with the S22, I did complain that the phone overheated pretty easily, which is quite uncomfortable to use, and I'm just really happy to say that I haven't experienced that a single time with this new S23. Even while installing updates when I first set up this phone, filming videos all day long with this phone, and even while gaming, which is honestly just a welcome improvement. And you know what is such a welcome improvement? The battery life. And oh my god, this was the sole reason why I told everyone not to get the S22 last year, because the battery life was just honestly horrendous. The power-hungry Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip, Samsung's poor battery optimization, mixed in with the tiny 3700 mAh battery on the S22, meant that that phone just could not last through the day, especially while I use data outside. I'm not even that much of a heavy user, as I usually just text and check social media, yet I just got over 3, sometimes 4 hours of screen on time if I was lucky. This year, Samsung bumped up the battery capacity to 3900 mAh, and with the efficiency improvements of the new processor, the battery life has just been incredible for me this past month, like on par or better than both my Pixel 7 and the iPhone 14 Pro. I've been easily getting 6 to 7 hours of screen on time on a mix of both 5G data and Wi-Fi, which easily lasts me through an entire day. I usually don't even use up the full battery and end up with like at least 30% left, as I don't use my phone that much throughout the day. And also, with really light usage, it can last me an entire 2 days with almost 5 hours of screen on time, which is unheard of. It does seem like the always on display is eating up a significant portion of the screen on time though, so you might want to turn that off if you're okay with not having an always on display. There's also the light performance profile mode that prioritizes battery life and cooling efficiency over processing speed, and in my testing, I've been getting over 8 hours of screen on time on that, which is absolutely nuts. I also can't notice any difference in phone performance on that mode either, which means that you can pretty much switch this mode by default. The only thing I'm not happy with is the still slow 25 watt charging on the S23. Should at least be 45 watts like the S23 Plus and Ultra, and it's time for Samsung to innovate on charging speed like the Chinese competitors. And finally, it's time to talk about cameras, which are honestly becoming the only focus of new phone releases. Here's where it gets disappointing though. All the crazy new camera changes went straight into the S23 Ultra, with 0 upgrades for all 3 rear sensors on the S23 and S23 Plus. The only change we saw this year was the improved 12 megapixel selfie camera, which honestly is actually quite noticeable. Selfie photos are really sharp now with great dynamic range, and portraits are looking even better with Samsung's amazing edge detection. Night selfies are where I saw the most improvements by far though, although selfie video still leaves a lot to be desired. As for the triple camera setup on the back, pictures unsurprisingly look exactly the same as the S22, although I don't have one to compare with anymore. Images coming from all 3 sensors are accurate and consistent across the board, and they all have that classic vibrant and punchy Samsung look. The aggressive HDR also works great in being able to expose each part of the scene evenly, although Samsung does tend to push the blacks pretty deeply and expose the highlights just before they start clipping for that punchier look, which I actually quite like. I will say I am quite impressed by how Samsung manages to suppress highlights, as it is night and day when you compare it to something like the iPhone 14 Pro. Night mode photos also look quite good, especially with good highlight control, although I will say the image is usually still quite noisy. The one downside of the main sensor that I found with the phone is that the pictures felt a little soft, especially when you compared it to something like the Pixel 7, which was honestly quite disappointing. The 50 megapixel high-res mode does work some of the time to enhance the details of the image, but often changes up the processing in a weird way, which might be off-putting to some. Hopefully that's something Samsung would be able to fix in a future software update though, as they do have a pretty good track record for that now. And finally, the video quality, which I'm just gonna take a snippet from my S23 vlog so you guys can judge for yourself. Alright, as we all know, iPhone is known to have the best video footage out of all the cameras, so we'll use this as the control. This is the video quality from the Pixel 7, which I think is only okay. And also, I'm using the rear cameras for all these video comparisons I'm showing, by the way. And finally, this is the footage from the S23 at 4K 30, and Samsung is generally known to have the best video on the Android side of things. Also, one new feature on the new S23 series is now the ability to shoot up to 8K 30 frames per second instead of the old 24 frames per second. These phones are also supposed to have newer mics, so let me know how they sound below. And finally, the front-facing sensors, which is super important if you're interested in any sort of vlogging. And first up, this is the iPhone 14 Pro. Next up, this is the selfie camera of the Pixel 7, and I think one of the weaker points of the Pixel is actually the selfie camera, so I don't expect this to look too good, but who knows, I don't know. And last but not least, this is the selfie footage coming from the S23, which does house a new 12 megapixel selfie sensor, so hopefully we do see some nice improvements over here. Let me know what you guys think down below of the footage, but I personally think the S23 looks great with great HDR and stabilization, although I think the video quality is still overall better on the iPhone. The mic quality is also something that's been improved the S23 though, and it sounds absolutely fantastic, especially compared to the Pixel 7. And that's basically it for my full review of the Galaxy S23. There's honestly not much to complain about this phone, as the overheating issues and more importantly, the battery life has been significantly improved way more than I could ever imagine. I was completely wrong about this phone, and I would like to offer my apologies to Samsung. Samsung, I'm very sorry for doubting you. But anyways, I can completely recommend this phone to anyone who's searching for a compact flagship, and I'm pretty sure that you will enjoy the experience very much. Stay tuned for my Pixel 7 comparison video though, that's coming up shortly, and also make sure to check out my awesome day in life vlog with the S23. And on that note, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button, and also have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next one.